Welcome to my channel, Botswana Thinking Law, where I bring you and the law closer. Today on this channel, which is part 3 of our video series on land, we will be dealing with tribal land. But before we get started on this video, I'd like to put in a disclaimer. This is not legal advice. This is simply a sharing of general information. If you have a problem of a legal nature, please engage the services of an attorney. I also wanted to let you know that the video also has timestamps. And if you're on a laptop or computer, if you're looking at the video, you'll see at the bottom of the video there's a broken line there. And every time you go to a certain portion in the broken line, you'll see that it's a specific topic. So you can use that to skip to different topics on the video. Or if you're also on your computer or laptop or on your phone, you can go to the description. And the way to get to the description when you're on your laptop or computer is to go to show more, scroll down from the socials, you'll see the time codes. If you're on your mobile, you just press the arrow button and it will show you the description. You also scroll down until you get to the time codes, and then you just press on the blue portion on the time codes and it will take you to that particular time and topic on the video. Now back to our video. What is tribal land? Tribal land is land that is held by the land board in trust for the citizens of Botswana. Tribal land is the biggest type of land in the country, followed by state land and lastly freehold land, which I've dealt with in previous videos. Tribal land can be held in various ways. There can be an issue of some document called a certificate of customary land grant. It can be held by way of memorandum of agreement of lease, and it can be held by way of title deed. Now, the memorandum of agreement of lease is the one that is then registered at the deeds registry to create the title deed. And in the course of this video, I will talk about how that comes to be. Firstly, let's deal with the customary land grant. This certificate issued in respect of the customary land grant is only ever issued in terms of the Tribal Land Act to citizens. In terms of that act, a certificate of customary land grant cannot be granted to non-citizens. Where a certificate of customary land grant is issued, there are various conditions that are placed on the person who is receiving that grant. So a person will make an application to the land board asking for customary land. And there are different types of customary land, being customary land that is plowing fields, residential, commercial, and so on. And the land board has taken the position that certain customary land will only be given by way of memorandum of agreement of lease. When the certificate of customary land grant is given, it will state the type of use of land. It will state the development that has to be done on the land and the period for such development. And one of the conditions is that if development is not done, then the land might be taken back or will be taken back by the land board. However, if the land is developed, the land board cannot take that land back without due process. An example is what we saw in relation to the previous problems surrounding the Kweneng Land Board and land allocation, where the land board made it clear that these people that were complaining about having their property demolished had not been given any certificates in respect of any property, and that the only individual that had been given a certificate had been duly compensated because the property had to be taken back for development purposes. And this can be seen as a form of expropriation. And that is the reason why these people are then compensated or given money for the developments. And the reason why I emphasize this is because tribal land cannot be sold. You are simply selling the development of that piece of land. As earlier stated, tribal land can also be held in the form of a memorandum of agreement of lease. This is a lease for a certain period of time, which cannot be for less than 10 years. If the lease is for a period of less than 10 years, then it does not have the ability of being registered at the deeds registry. A person is given the lease by the land board, and when I say a person here, it can be an individual or a company, and it can be a citizen or non-citizen. If the person who is asking for land is a non-citizen, then in addition to their application, before the giving or granting to them of the memorandum of lease, the minister has to consent. This is similar to how the minister has to consent in the Land Control Act in relation to freehold land. I must state here that even though the law provides for this, it is in very, very rare instances that the minister will consent to the issuance to a non-citizen of a tribal land lease. If the ministerial consent is granted, then the lease will be given to a non-citizen. The exception to this issue of non-citizen is where the person receives it in the form of an inheritance. Once a person has a lease given to them by the land board for their piece of tribal land, they have the option to have that land surveyed. And if they have the land surveyed, they will use the survey diagrams to register a title deed at the deeds registry. Inside that lease, there will be various conditions about when the property should be developed, when the lease will come to an end, and there is also a provision for the renewal of that lease. Based on the use of the lease, you find that some leases, specifically residential, are for a period of 99 years, and some are for a period of 50 years, especially commercial leases. The negotiation for the renewal of a lease has to start 6 years before the lease comes to an end. This means that if the lease was issued in 1980 and the lease would be 41 years old in 2021, there is a period of 9 years left on the lease. Within a period of 3 years, the person has to start negotiating the renewal of the lease with the land board. If the lease is not renewed, or if the renewal is declined for various reasons, or if the person surrenders the property early, then all the developments on the land will go with the land back to the landlord, to be held in trust for the citizens of Botswana. When a lease is registered at the deeds registry, it can be registered by an individual. It doesn't have to be done through a conveyancer or notary public. A person who then wants to sell their rights, title and interest in that lease to a third party or donate it has to do it by way of a notarial deed of cession of lease. And in doing so, the transaction has to be prepared and signed before a notary public. And there are various documents in addition to the notarial deed that are prepared by the notary public, that are signed by the parties, and there is also the process that has to be followed in order to get to having the property ceded. Firstly, if the cession is the first time that the property is being taken from the lease and then given to another person, there has to be an application to the land board that has granted that lease for the issuance of a compliance certificate. There has to also be an application to the Botswana Unified Revenue Services, BURS, for transfer duty purposes and for the person to be assessed and to see whether or not they are supposed to pay transfer duty for that cession. In order for a person to be said to pay transfer duty or not to pay transfer duty, there are various considerations. I've dealt with the issue of who can and can't pay transfer duty on my Facebook page, also called Botswana Thinking Law, and follow that page and see where a person can be required to pay transfer duty. However, if you also want me to make a video dealing with the issue of transfer duty specifically, then please comment down below or leave a comment in my Facebook page or even contact me on Twitter at BW Thinking Law. I am always appreciative of your engagement. After everything is done, then the transaction will be lodged at the deeds registry for the registration of the notarial deed of cession of lease. When a party is receiving this property as an inheritance, the issue of compliance is not necessary. In order for a person to register this lease at the deeds registry, as stated, they have to have the property surveyed and the survey registered with the Department of Surveys and Mapping. If a person wants to give a third party this customary land, and the customary land is held by way of lease, the parties enter into an agreement called a Memorandum of Agreement of Cession of Lease. Not a Memorandum of Agreement of Sale, because you cannot sell tribal land. You can only cede your rights, title and interest in that land. And if the property is not developed, then that Memorandum of Agreement of Cession of Lease will have a provision for the development of the property, because if the property is not developed to the satisfaction of the land board, then you cannot get a compliance certificate. However, if the property is being ceded for a second or third time, because compliance was given at the beginning, it is not necessary for you to keep applying for the issuance of a certificate of compliance. And if a person of a certificate of customary land grant, which, it must be noted, does not have an expiry date. So, just to clarify on this issue, if you're given a certificate of customary land grant, it does not say this certificate will come to an end in 50 or 99 years. No, it is in perpetuity, meaning as long as you don't convert it to a lease, you can hold it for as long as you want. The reason why a lot of people register leases at the deeds registry for purposes of customary land is because, one, if the person is a non-citizen, then they are given a lease anyway. Or two, if the person has been given a certificate of customary land grant and they want to use that land as security for a loan, and they need to register a mortgage bond, then they have to register the lease at the deeds registry. And in registering that lease, then your holding of the property in perpetuity will be reduced to 50 or 99 years, depending on the use of that piece of land. Tribal land, like I said, is held in trust by the land board for the citizens of Botswana. If a person is not happy with the decision of the land board, and this could be where a person has applied for a renewal of a lease, has applied to be granted a piece of customary land grant and the land board has refused, then they can take up this refusal by taking the matter to the land tribunal. However, this video is not for purposes of dealing with how to deal with the land tribunal. It's for purposes of just dealing with tribal land generally. If you want me to deal with the issue of the documents to be prepared, specifically the conditions in those documents for purposes of cessions, and to also maybe go through a physical lease to highlight certain conditions, then please let me know so that I can make a video and we can go through a lease and view certain conditions. Because one of the issues that was of consideration, or at least that came to mind when this whole Gwenin land board issue was taking place, was that perhaps people didn't have a full appreciation of the conditions that are in the leases or even in the certificate of customary land grant. If you also want me to deal with the issues of expropriation of land, whether the land is freehold or state land or tribal land, please also let me know either on my Facebook page, on my Twitter, or in the comments below. Any engagement that is between me and you is always appreciated. You know, your messages that you keep sending to me and I respond are fully appreciated. Having said that, I hope you received something of use in this video, and the next video will be the video that deals with mortgage bonds. And the reason why this last video, which will probably be part 4, is necessary to come at the end is because there are certain things that I deal with that have been covered when I discuss the issue of state land, freehold land, and tribal land. Thank you so much for joining me in this video, and please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell so that you're notified every time I put up a video. And I hope that this was very informative. Thank you for joining me. Bye.